Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So I think most of you already know the classical chatbot interface that OpenAI provides, which is at chatgpt.com. We have also chat.deepseek.com, and from these interfaces you can usually ask questions. Okay, any question that you want. For example, what is a chatbot? And then, okay, so this is the classical chatbot interface for OpenAI, and you can provide a prompt here. This is what we call the user prompt, and then you send your prompt to, or your query, to OpenAI, and there are different models available. The default one is ChatGPT 4o, and it will provide you responses. Okay, so here in this interface you only have access to sending your personal query, which we call the user prompt, and there is no way to send any other prompt. But in the background there is also another prompt that is called the system prompt, which tells how ChatGPT should provide a response to the user. So this is the same thing. If I work on DeepSeek, I can ask the same question and it will behave in the same way. So these are just web interfaces that provides you an easy to use interface to write your questions. And these chatbots are built to be general, to respond to any kind of question. They are not very specific to a particular use case. Like in our case today, we would like to build a chatbot in the context of healthcare to provide medical assistance to patients. Of course, if I ask questions about healthcare, it will be able to respond as well. Okay, what are the symptoms of the flu? So these chatbots are built to be general. They can respond to any kind of questions. But now I want to build something very specific. Okay, not general, but in the same case, I would like to use these smart language models to ask them my particular type of questions related to medical assistance, and I don't want them to respond to any kind of questions, to be very focused on this concept. Okay, now a more sophisticated interface that allow you to do things that in more details is not on chatgpt.com or I'm not sure. Yes. Okay, not on these classical interfaces, but in a developer interface that we call platform.openai.com. And this will allow you to go into a finer grain detail for creating a chatbot, customize a chatbot. And you can see now, when I go to OpenAI platform.openai.com, I have still the same user prompt interface where I can ask questions. So I can still ask question, what is a chatbot? And I can type run. So it's going to provide a response. And here there is no specification on how the response have to be provided. So this is where it comes the role of the system prompt. Now I will say, you are a health care professional and your role is to respond to medical questions only. Okay. Any question outside the medical context, reply that this is out of the scope. Now, let's look what will happen if I do the following. Now, I'm going to delete this one and the response, and I will ask the same question. What is a chatbot? Or what is artificial intelligence? Something not related, really. Okay. Look now, it says this is out of scope. Now, because the system prompt, it has identified a very particular role to the chatbot. Now, if I ask what is a chatbot, same thing. It was able to respond before, but now it says I am here to assist with medical related questions. If you have any health or medical inquiries, feel free to ask. So from this example, you have seen and observed the importance and impact of creating a clear system message, because it will impact the scope and the ability of the chatbot to respond to questions. For example, if you want to create a dedicated healthcare assistant, you must provide what is the role and also what is the boundary of question that it is allowed to answer. By the way, it is still allowed to answer. It's the same language model. Now, if I remove this restriction, it will have a different behavior, maybe. Okay, I am here to help with medical questions. Okay, because I said only. Now let me remove only and see what happens. Okay, what is a chatbot here? So you can see it really understands the scope very well here. So if I put only back, and let me put the same only, and put the same restriction. So in this case, any question outside of this scope, respond that it is out of scope. And that's it. Okay. Now, if I ask a question about the medical flu, now it will provide me an answer. So you can also provide additional guidelines. For example, look, the output here, it made the highlight using these double stars as a special type of markup. Now I can say, for example, your response must be formatted in HTML. Okay, so it will provide another, or in plain text, for example. Let's see what happens. Okay. Look, now it provided an HTML response, which is a particular format for the output. I can also make it a JSON, okay, which is another type of output. So this is to show you the importance of the system prompt and what type of guidelines you can provide to the chatbot to behave. Look, now it made it in structured format. It's a JSON format which has a pair of key and values. So it makes symptoms, fever, cough. So here it's a structured response based on the request that I mentioned. So there are additional parameters that you can play with here, like the type of, okay, response is out of scope, how you'd like the response to be here. Okay, let me just try it again. And this is the response format because I mentioned here it's a JSON object. I can choose other type of models. Okay, this is the O1, which is the advanced reasoning model. This is a recent reasoning model from OpenAI, which is called the O3 Mini. Okay, there is also the legacy language models like the GPT 3.5 Turbo or the GPT-4. Okay, so you can choose any of this.
But they need a paid.
Usually OpenAI, they can allow to have a free tier. This is what I remember, but I'm not sure whether they're still offering this. But everyone can try to create, it's quick and easy, create an account with platform.openai.com and check. I think by default, it will provide you $5 credit that you can use. Or you can charge your account with just $5. And you know, $5 can take you for several months, especially if you work with cheap models like GPT 3.5 or GPT-4o Mini. Okay, so you can choose any model and then test. Okay, it doesn't work, this model with JSON format. Okay, so we can try it again. Now, this is from this particular interface on platform.openai.com. But now imagine that you want to do this in Python. This platform provides you a way to take a code, okay, and just copy paste it into a Python editor. Okay, let me now just put GPT-4o Mini. Now, where is the O Mini? Okay, it's this one. I'm going to make the same thing, and now I will click code, and look, now it provides me the Python code that I will need to take in any Python editor and execute it. So let's try this now in action. I will go to my drive and create a new collab, just an empty collab. Okay. And remember, I've taken the code from here, from Playground, just this code. Okay, I will call it trying OpenAI chat in Python. Okay, so this is the code. We're going to import OpenAI from the module OpenAI, and I'm going to explain this. You know, just first of all, we need to install OpenAI here because it is not provided by default in Google Colab, and then I will just execute the same Look now, it only provided me the message only contains the system prompt. Let me just ask the question and take the code with both the question and the system prompt. Okay, I'm going to remove the response of the assistant. Look now. So it provides me, this is now how we call the client, client.chat.completions.create. This is the model name that we have selected. And these are the messages that we will send to OpenAI. Okay, as I already explained, we have two types of messages. We have the system prompt, which tells the chatbot what is its role. So it's basically here, it has taken the same system message that I have provided. You are a healthcare professional, and your role is to respond to medical question only. If any question is outside of the scope, respond that it is outside of the scope. And your response has to be formatted in JSON. And then I put the question here, okay? What are the symptoms of the flu? So now executing this code here, it will result into exactly the same response or a similar response that we have received. In this interface platform. Okay, now it's requesting me the OpenAI client must be set. You know why it didn't work here? I wanted to access OpenAI, but I am not authorized. I am not authorized to access OpenAI because I did not provide an authentication key. So now how to get an authentication key? It's very simple. Again, we go to platform.openai.com, and this time I will go to dashboard. Okay, because now I am in playground. So this is what we call the playground of the platform interface. And now in dashboard, you will have an account with billing information. So if you want to add credits, you can go to billing and then provide a balance. Okay, so you can add credit to your balance here. So I already put a balance in advance, and this balance will be used as I send queries to OpenAI. Now, going back to dashboard, this interface, I want to create an OpenAI key. Okay, so I go to OpenAI keys here, and you have a button to create a new secret key. So I select the project. Now in the new version of OpenAI a couple of months ago, they introduced the concept of project to organize your OpenAI keys based on the project that you work on. And let me call this as Hackathon. Hackathon, February 2025. Okay, this is just a name, but here OpenAI will provide me an authentication key. So when I use this key, it's going to authorize me to query OpenAI. OpenAI is a paid service, and for every query, it's going to reduce my balance, okay, based on the cost that will be induced by the query. So how to do that? We need to define an OpenAI key. And okay, so this is a temporary key that I will be using during this demo. And then, okay, now I am authorized to ask this question to OpenAI. Now I send a request, and finally I receive a response. And let's show the response here. This is the response. It's a JSON, okay, it's an object that contains different fields. And of course we can see here that we have a content, and finally we find symptoms, and this is the response. Because I've made it in the JSON format, let me just make it in plain text. Okay, changing this to plain text to have something clearer. And sending back the response. Now, if I want to extract only the response by itself, it's response.choices. I'm going to explain you later on this. Just let me show you the content of the response, and then we will go back into all the details. And this is the response to my question. What are the symptoms of the flu? The symptoms of the flu can vary by typically include fever or chill, cough, sore throat. You know, it provides a correct response. So this is one of the ways, simple way to make simple medical assistant using the Python OpenAI library. Is there any question at this stage?
Any questions?
Okay. So
everything is clear.
it seems so. Okay.
Excuse me. Yes. So did you try it?
They want to try? I will give them some time to try later. Okay, let me continue to explain. Now, the same thing that we have done with OpenAI, we can do it with any other language model. So any language model, usually they provide a platform or a console where you can have a playground to create custom chatbots and also to take a code and to use it in Python. So let's try with DeepSeek and with Groq. So Groq also, it's another platform that provide you access to different open source models. It was done by Elon Musk, and yesterday I heard the news that they are going to release Groq 3, which is claimed to be better. You know, we don't believe until we see that it is better than DeepSeek or OpenAI. And the competition of large language model is very high nowadays. And this, you know, you can use it. It's free. You can create an OpenAI key without paying. Okay, Groq for now, it's free. Okay, and provide access. You know, this is the playground. And here we can see it provides access only to open source models. So we can see Qwen. This is a Chinese. This is a Chinese language model. So what is general? 32 billion parameters, and this one is fine-tuned for coding tasks. Okay, and this one is the DeepSeek Reasoning R1, which is distilled from the Qwen 32 bits. So this is like a clone of the Qwen 32, but it was fine-tuned and trained to be reasoning. This is made by DeepSeek. Distilling, it means it was pre-trained as a teacher-student model. We take a big model as a teacher, and then we create a small model, which is called the student, that will try to learn from the teacher. This is how distilled models are built. And you can find Llama. This is from Meta. We can find Whisper, Llama 3.1, Llama 3.2 with different sizes from 8 billion parameters to even 90 billion parameters. Okay, and these are some models from OpenAI for text to speech or speech to text. Let's try a model here to see how it works. We can try DeepSeek, for example. We have here also a system model. We can take the same system message that we have used before. And yeah, so let me put the system message here. And the response must be in plain text. And let me try a simple model before trying the reasoning one. What are the symptoms of flu? Now we can submit. So now this model, I will submit. You know, it's very fast because this is a small model. It's 3.1, 8 billion parameters. It's very fast. And look now, the common symptoms. It provides also a correct response. Maybe not at the same quality as DeepSeek or OpenAI, okay, but still the answer is correct. Okay, now if I ask what is AI, let's see if this model is smart enough to understand. I am out of scope for answering this question. So yeah, this model understands. And if I want to use this model now in Python, same thing, I go here, I make view code, and I will take this code here and copy it. Okay, so in this code we will use Groq. Let me remove this assistant message. I will put only one for simplicity. And we need to do the same thing, pip install Groq. We will install Groq library, and then we will ask the same question to Llama 3.18b instance. Okay, you see, it's very simple. Now it has enabled the API key. Yes, I need to have an API key. Okay, so it didn't work because I need to make an OpenAI an API key, the same thing. So going back to the console, we go to API keys and create an API key here. Let me call it Hackathon, February 2025. Verification is okay. It provides me an API key. I copy it. I go here and I write API key equal to this one. just to make it simple, I don't want to talk about streaming right now, so I'm going to make stream false. And let's execute. And in the same way, this is completion. Let's say the content of completion here. And we will have something similar to what we had before. Now, let's go back and view the code because I don't want to enable stream. Okay, this is how we print the completion code. Okay, look now, it's different from the way how we get the message. It's basically the same as we get the message from OpenAI. Okay, Groq, it uses a Python library very similar to OpenAI. Okay, client.chat.completion.create. We use the same structure. Also, it's a completely different module. You know, here we use Groq, and there we use OpenAI, but they have used the same instructions. Client.chat.completion.create, and even the output is the same structure. Completion.choices0.message.content. We will understand this later in details. Okay, and now seeing the content, this is the response from that model. Now, if we want to try DeepSeek, it's possible. I need to change the model only. So I can use DeepSeek R1 and view the code. So I just need to change this, what it is, it's here. Let's change this one, this model. And then completion. Look now, we get now a response. Okay, so the user is asking. Look now, this is the part. Now the response, it has two parts. One part that is thinking, because DeepSeek R1 is a reasoning model, and every reasoning model, it has the response has two parts. One part related to the reasoning, and another part related to the response itself. Okay, so this is the chat completion. We have the content. Okay, we have a first part that is think here, and I'm not sure why it stops. Okay, so the user is asking about the symptom of flu. Now, this is what happens exactly when we go to DeepSeek. Let me go to DeepSeek and enable the DeepSeek reasoning model. What are the symptoms of the flu? Look now in DeepSeek, when I initialize or I set or I activate the reasoning model, is not going to provide a response right away. It will start by thinking. Okay, so this first part is what we call the reasoning part. Okay, let me see. The user is asking about the symptom of the flu. Wait, they just asked about the same question before. Let me check the history. So look, it has access to the history. Now it is thinking. It is making a reasoning, not providing the response right away. And these are the evolutions made recently about language models. Now, instead of talking about language model, we talk about reasoning models. And DeepSeek is not the first one. We have also OpenAI with the O1 model, and also the O3 models. I'm going to go back to DeepSeek, to OpenAI. Look now, it has made a complete reasoning, get back and forth, and finally it provided a different type of response with main symptoms and so on. So ChatGPT also, it has the same capabilities. So if I ask the same question to this model, the O1, now I can go here and check ChatGPT O1. Look, it's not going to provide the response, it's a reasoning. So it made a reasoning, and then we provide a response. Look, it reasoned for 4 seconds, and then it say, I'm gathering clear list of flu symptoms, emphasizing fever, chills, cough, sore throat, and so on. And finally, it provided the response. And ChatGPT provide different reasoning models. There is the O1, O3 mini, O3 mini for high. This is good, great for coding and logic. O3 mini was released maybe 10 days ago. It's also impressive, much faster than the O1, and provide also excellent capabilities. Okay. Now, we've learned many things, and this is how we can do in Python. Okay, now to have everything in detail, I provide you a notebook, which is called Building an LLM Chatbot Using OpenAI, Groq, and DeepSeek. So we can open this notebook and let's follow it together. So I presented most of the concept in my introduction. I wanted to make this progressively, and now we will focus on the Python coding and understanding the response, the different fields that we get from the response. Yeah, هل هناك أسئلة? If you have questions, you can also send us on the chat. Dr. Muhammad, if there are questions on the chat, you can let me know if they don't want to ask verbally. Let me give them a few seconds if they have any question to write.
So I will open the speaker.
Okay.
شباب في أسئلة؟
No problem, no problem. It's not mandatory that you have the same output. So let me share with you the one about Groq. You can make accounts here. This is the chat. And also we have another one for DeepSeek. Let me go to console, DeepSeek, or platform. How can we make what is the dashboard? Yeah, you need to get the keys. In the notebook I sent, there is already an OpenAI key that you can use. Okay, I'm going to delete it later. So in the notebook I've sent you, it contains all the keys that you need to do the work today.
So I would suggest maybe to follow.
Okay, let's follow this notebook step by step so you can understand how to work with it, and later on you can try your own examples. So this lab, it focuses on utilizing the OpenAI GPT models, also Groq and DeepSeek, okay, for question answering within the healthcare context, because we would like to build a chatbot for healthcare and medical assistance. So in this notebook, you will understand how to install and import OpenAI library, how to set up an API authentication for OpenAI and other models using environment variables, define the system and user prompts to interact with the language model, send the requests to OpenAI API for chat completions, for getting the responses, and finally, access and read the response of the model. Now let's start with the first step. As already mentioned, we need to install OpenAI. So you can follow with me by clicking on the cell. It's going to execute, and it will install the OpenAI Python library that we will use in this notebook. The second step, this is an OpenAI key that I provide you during this training, so you can use it. So first of all, we will assign to a variable that we call API key. So there are two different ways. The first way is to assign the OpenAI key to an environment variable. This is why we import OS. It's not shared. So there are two ways on how you can assign an API key to an OpenAI client. The first way is to assign it to an environment variable that we call OpenAI API key, and it has to be all capitalized, written exactly in this way. So this means it will create an environment variable that will allow you to create an OpenAI client without explicitly specifying the OpenAI key here. Of course, now since we are in Colab, when you create an environment variable in this way, it will expose the API key. But when we do it, for example, on locally on a computer, you can set the environment variable into a bash RC file if you work on Linux or on Mac, or you can also add it as an environment variable on Windows so that you don't expose it to others, because environment variables usually they are stored in hidden files, because this is a sensitive information. If anybody takes the OpenAI key from you, it can use it and consume your credit. Of course, this API key will not be useful after this training. So this is the first way on how we can do that. And the second way is that you can define the API key here inside the declaration of the client. So both techniques are correct, but it is more professional and much better that you set an environment variable. Of course, When you do it locally, you must make it in a hidden file, like the bash configuration files, and finally create it without disclosing it in the client declaration. This is the first step, is to create an OpenAI object. So first of all, we need to import the library from OpenAI, and then we do client initialization, which create an instance of the OpenAI client, which will allow us to make API calls to OpenAI services. Now the second step, we need to define the system prompt and the user prompt of our chatbot. And as already introduced in my introduction, the system prompt, it sets the overall behavior, the desired behavior, and the persona of the AI model, of the AI chatbot. How we would like the chatbot to behave. Is it like a medical assistant, like in our case, or a customer support service, or maybe an instructor that will grade exams, or whatever thing that you want the chatbot to behave like. So it provides instruction and context to guide the AI responses. Okay, what is the scope of the response? What is the format of the response? What are the constraints on the response? So all of this has to be specified in the system prompt. For example, in your code, the system prompt will instruct the AI to act as a healthcare expert that focus only on medical questions and prioritizes accuracy. So these are the directions that we can give, like for a new employee, and define his role. Your new employee role only is to do this task. You are not allowed to do any other thing. And now the user prompt, again, so it's the specific question. This is what we want to get a response from the AI. It will trigger the AI to generate a response based on the system prompt and on the input. And in the code, the prompt variable contains, for example, the patient symptom or the question that you want the AI to analyze and provide you a response on. Okay, so this is how we do it. It's very simple. You create a variable in Python, okay, and here you provide the system prompt. You are now a healthcare expert, and your role is to respond to medical questions. You will display the disease corresponding to the symptoms entered. For each question, you must provide the best answer possible. The healthcare is critical field, so make sure about the correctness of your answer. Look now, we try to make like warnings or emphasize the importance of providing correct responses, because this is an important thing. Okay, if you are not sure, then inform the patient that you can not have a clear answer. Okay, we can say do not provide answers that may harm the health of the user or the patient. Because look now, the system prompt is something really very, very important, especially in the context of humanitarian relief or healthcare or medical assistance. We need to instruct the chatbot to respond correctly and not to make mistakes. Of course, there are different ways. Now we're doing only the very simple way, and there is no guarantee, by the way, if you send a question to a chatbot, a pre-trained chatbot, like for example ChatGPT or DeepSeek, that it will not provide a wrong answer. There are other techniques like using fine-tuned models or like using retrieval augmented generation, so that the model, before trying to answer, it will try to retrieve the response from authentic sources and then send it along with the question to the large language model as a context, so that we provide the response in much better accuracy. But for the things that we are doing now, the responses usually are going to be fine. But for a real case or a real world chatbot in healthcare, this is not a sufficient solution. This is not a reliable solution. Okay, so I'm going to set now the system prompt, and I try to make sure for the chatbot not to respond to ambiguous questions. And here I provide the prompt. Now this is my question. I have the following symptom: headache, fever since 2 days. What is the disease? Okay, something like this. Now, going back to asking the question, we're going to use client.chat.completion.create. It's the same that I have used here. Okay, and this is the structure. We need to send a message. So our message will contain a system prompt, and the content of the system prompt will be what we provided in this variable. Let me just put this here on the top. And then we have the user prompt, which is the question I provided here. And here I have different parameters. Okay, I have different parameters that I explain all of them here. Now, client.chatCompletion.create, this initiate the request and to generate the text from OpenAI. the model that we specify here. It specifies the model that we want to use. As already mentioned, there are different models with OpenAI, and like ChatGPT-4, O-Mini, like ChatGPT-O. There are some audio models. There are some reasoning models like the O1 Mini, the O3 Mini, that we can also call. I'm going to use ChatGPT-O4 Mini with these two questions. And the temperature here, this is an important parameter. Like the response generated by a large language model like ChatGPT is random, is probabilistic. Now, if I repeat the same question multiple times, every time is going to generate a different response. Of course, the response will have a similar meaning, but the word generated will be different. Now,
I think some students, they have a question.
okay, they can ask.
Can you?
Why I don't hear the question? I think I should hear the questions from here.
I think maybe because you're reducing the.
In principle, it should work, but anyway.
So, no, do you have a question? Yes.
So, depends on what we can or we should choose the model.
Okay, so choosing the model depends on several factors: the accuracy required and the cost. Now, if you don't care about the cost, you will use the most sophisticated models, like for example, GPT-4o, and it can be O1, for example, and O1, I think it has a different structure for on how to code, or O3 Mini and so on. Now, if you want to check what is the cost of the requests, we can do OpenAI pricing. And let's look. This is an important question, and we can see the pricing now for different models. Look now, if we use GPT-4o, it will provide us a context length of 128,000 input tokens. But here, look at the price for 1 million token. If you send 1 million token in the input, this will cost you $2.5. And for the output, 1 million tokens, it costs $10. This is for GPT-4o, because it is a model with high intelligence and is suitable for very complex tasks like healthcare. If you use GPT-4o Mini, it provides you similar input context length. But look now at the pricing. For the 1 million token, it costs only 0.15 cents, okay, in comparison to $2.5. And it will cost you 0.6 on 1 million token as compared to $10. So you can see the huge difference in pricing. And if you put a chatbot for a lot of users to do it, you can reach $1,000 consumption when you use GPT-4o quite quickly. If you have, for example, 1,000 users using a daily basis with a lot of questions. Other models also, like for example, that are more expensive, the reasoning models, like the O1. Look, the O1, it costs $15 for 1 million tokens in the input and $60 for the output, because this model, it accepts 200,000 context length, number of tokens in the input, and this costs 15,000 per 1 million token in the input. So for example, if you put this context, it will just cost you this input only 1/5, so $3 just for the input. And the output will depend on how many tokens that will be generated. And of course, this model, the most expensive, in this case, they're going to be more reliable because O1 is going to make a full reasoning. Look, O3 now, it's a good alternative. It only costs 1.1 for 1 million token. It's even less expensive than GPT-4o because these models are kind of quantized models. They have smaller accuracy, so they are faster to run. But still, it offers you a huge context length, and also the output is 4.4 instead of $10 for GPT-4o. So O3 Mini and 4o are less accurate than their counterparts, but they are actually not bad for many of the commodity tasks or everyday tasks that you have. Now, if I look at DeepSeek, why DeepSeek has made an evolution? Because it provides comparable performance to OpenAI, but much lower prices. Let me now compare the reasoning models of OpenAI with the reasoning models of ChatGPT. Now, DeepSeek Chat, this is the equivalent of GPT-4o. Okay, and let's look at the pricing of DeepSeek Chat models. Of course, it provides smaller context, but still decent, not bad, because the input cannot exceed 64,000 tokens and the output only 8,000 tokens, which is not bad. But look at what 1 million token, it only costs 0.07 as compared to 2.5 for 1 million token. And these are equivalent. I mean, this one, like we've done here now, an example, it provides an excellent response, DeepSeek, but for the cost is much cheaper. Now comparing the reasoning model, so the equivalent of O1 is DeepSeek Reasoner, and still provide the same context length, 64K and 8K. But look at the cost, 0.15 for 1 million token as input price, compared to $15 for 1 million token. So it's basically 1 divided by 100. Okay, the comparison between prices, and this is why now DeepSeek has made a big milestone in large language model commercial applications. It's open source, and it's available at much cheaper cost than the OpenAI models. Now, responding to the question, the choice of the model depends on the level of accuracy that you have, on the complexity of the task, and the budget that you will allow for your chatbot. Is it clear? Okay.
DeepSeek is a lot cheaper. Is there anything wrong with it? Maybe because it's cheaper, the performance is also low?
No, the performance of DeepSeek was proven scientifically that it is equal or sometimes exceed the performance of the counterpart GPT model. But the Chinese, they have used a different approach to train their models with a much cheaper price and even with a smaller number of GPUs. This is what it makes a difference. So this is why DeepSeek, it has attracted the attention. It was actually the talk of everyone in the last 3 weeks. It's because the ability to reach a similar performance than OpenAI with a much cheaper training cost and inference cost. So there is nothing wrong with the accuracy of the models divided by DeepSeek.
Because there's a lot of server attack on it, so the server is almost busy.
Yes, this is true. This is one of the current limitations, but I think in just a couple of weeks is going to resume the regular working. And this is the same thing that also happened to OpenAI in its release. It was not always available in the beginning because of, it can be cyber attacks, it can be high demand. So maybe the DeepSeek servers were not, prepared for this amount of load at this time. But I don't think that it's going to last for a very long time. They will be able to recover soon. Okay? Okay, so now to understand, I'm going to explain the different parameters of creating a chatbot. The temperature, this is one of the most important parameters. And this will determine the level of creativity of the large language model in text generation. Just to explain, let me explain this by making a demonstration. I will explain this and we go for prayer. So let me just create this question, what are the symptoms of flu? And I will put a large temperature value. And let's see what happens to the response. It didn't affect here too much, but usually a large value seems like, let me try another one. It must be 2 only, 1.7. So usually when we put a large value, there is a high risk that we receive a bad response. It can do hallucinations because of the level of creativity. Now, let me just make something, maybe I put, remove the context. So usually when you put a very large value, you will have always a different response and it may be prone to hallucinations. But smaller values will have less creativity. Look now, because I remove the system prompt. Look now what happens. It's complete hallucination. Now, if I put something like close to 0, like 0.1, even without a system prompt that guides the response, I will have still something that makes sense. Okay, so to summarize, a high temperature, it means high creativity. But too much high creativity, it may lead to hallucination. And the very low temperature, it will lead to almost a deterministic output. Okay, so the model will always try to select the highest probability next token in the pool of possible tokens, and this will result to almost the same output. Let me put something like 0, and let's observe whether it's going to change, the response is going to change. Okay, look now, the symptoms of the flu can vary in severity and may include different things. Now, let me execute it again, and let me try to see the response here. Look, this response is almost the same. The symptoms, look, of the flu can vary in severity and may include, very little changes, because here it's almost deterministic. Now, let me put this to 1.2, and look now. It's a bit different now, look, especially in, or let me make it to 1 point. So sometimes there is a caching there could be a caching of responses. Look, it's completely different now. Start to make hallucinations. So this is a hyperparameter, which is very important. Usually, in critical applications like healthcare, we should not put high temperature value. I will put something around 0.4 to keep way for small imagination, but not to go very far from the correct response. Okay, so this is an important parameter. We have max completion token. We have also max tokens or max completion tokens. What is the maximum number of tokens in the output, and some additional parameters that we will explain afterwards. So there is a break now?
Yes.
Okay, we can stop for a break. So please feel free to go through the notebook during the break, and afterward we will. Okay, so let's continue. So we have talked about the effect of temperature, and it has to be a value that is relatively small, especially in the context of healthcare, to make sure that we don't have issues with hallucinations. We have selected the GPT-4o mini. We can select also the GPT-4o. Usually for this type of simple questions, we will not figure out too much differences in the response. Of course, the O is better or much better than the O mini. And we can see now the output. In just a moment, let me show you the output. This is the response for also the 4o. Okay. Now let's try to understand the structure of the response. What is the content of the response? Let me just put it here. So we have these are the parameters of the client.chat.completion.create. We specify the model, we specify the messages, the system prompt, the user prompt, the temperature controls the randomness of the output. As already mentioned, the higher values make the output more creative and unpredictable, while the lower values, like 0, make it more deterministic and focused. So it has to be value in between. We have also the maximum number of tokens, which limits how many tokens will be generated in the response. If you put 256, it means the response will be limited to 256 tokens in the output. And then we have the top one, frequency penalty, presence penalty. These are also other parameters for the inference. And this one controls the diversity of the output. And the value of 1 means the tokens, all tokens are considered. It means it will consider all the pool of tokens. And lower values, it means it's going to focus only on the selection of the most likely tokens. So these are more technical parameters. I'm going to skip just to focus on things that you might need for the hackathon. The important thing is that try to put a value that is relatively small for the temperature. And this is the output, which is the response. Let's look at the response. As already mentioned, it's a JSON output, and it has several parameters. Okay, we have ID, we have choices, which are different responses that would be received. We have also the usage, which contains the number of tokens in completion, it means in the output, or the number of prompt tokens, these are the number of input tokens, and the total number of tokens, it means the sum of these both. So let's see this in a clearer way. The output is composed of an ID, which is a unique identifier for the specific request. So for example, in our case, this is the ID of the response. Choices, it's the list containing the generated responses. Now in our case, if this list contains only one response, okay, when it contains only one response, so we will access this response using the index 0. This is why we have put choices 0, because we will consider the first and unique response received from ChatGPT or from the large language model. And then inside the response, we have access to messages. Okay, so the next one is the message, which is this one. And inside the message, we have a content. And this will represent the content of the response message that we receive from AI. So this is the actual text generated by the model. And the role, of course, it's the role of the responder. In our case, the role is assistant, because AI is considered as an assistant role. So if you remember, we have the system prompt, because this is the role of a system, this is the role of the user, and now the response will come with the role of an assistant. And the very important thing that will impact the cost is the number of tokens. You know that the large language model will accept tokens which are words or also subwords. So before making any inference, this word will be decomposed into tokens. And now OpenAI and large language model, they will charge you based on the number of total tokens that you put in the input and the number of tokens in the output. You remember when we talked about OpenAI pricing, so this is how OpenAI will charge us. Okay, it will count how many tokens in the input and how many tokens in the output, and will multiply by the price per token. Now in our case, the question has induced 122 tokens. How many? What are the symptoms of the flus? And the completion, which is the energy response, it has generated 129 completion tokens. If we multiply by the cost per token, in this case, we will find the total cost of this request. Of course, with a simple mathematical equation, we can calculate the total cost by multiplying the completion token and the prompt tokens. And now inside the content, okay, so yeah, this is basically the response message. It's basically the same. Okay, so we have response, choices, message, and content. So now if we get back to the way how we send the message, here we have an important parameter. It's called the stream, and we put it to false. So what does it mean? Here, when we ask a question, we're going to wait until the response will come back. Okay, so we have to wait until the response will come back, and then we can visualize the response. However, let's look at ChatGPT. Okay, if I ask a question, what are the symptoms of cold and flu? Look, I don't wait. We're gonna, okay, now I want to choose another model, ChatGPT 4.0. Okay, I'm not going to wait. It's going to send me the tokens one by one. This is what we call the streaming mode. So the ChatGPT will send you word by word or token by token in form of a stream. So you can also have, if you want to have a fast response, instead of making stream equal to false, you can set stream to be true. In this case, you will receive the tokens one by one. So now this is the response stream. When we set the stream equal to true, in this case, we can show the response as they are coming in real time instead of waiting for them until all the response is completed. Let me execute this one, and please make an observation. Let me increase the number of tokens to 1024 to write more. Look now. It has been sending the tokens one by one, okay, instead of waiting for this. Maybe I can also add print choice delta token. Yeah, so look at this again. Okay, I can see the response coming in real time. Okay, so this is the idea of, let me make /n to see the tokens coming one by one. Or, yeah. Look now, this is how the words will come. Okay, they will come as chunks. And let me also, instead of waiting for this, I can print the chunks so we can see the tokens. A chunk is like one token. Okay, but one token, maybe it's a part of a word. Okay, /n, okay, it's a token chunk. this is the chunk, you know. It will contain the token. This is why we make chunk choices 0. So maybe we can have, okay, instead of making as an object, so this is the best way to show the chunks. Now, if I don't put /n, it's going to append them one after the other, so it's in the same way that it comes in ChatGPT. The words come one after the other. Now, this is the effect of streaming. Is there any question? Now, the same thing, yes?
Any question? Questions? Clear?
Yes, clear for now.
Okay. So the same thing that we did for OpenAI, I'm going to show you the same with Groq. Okay, what is the advantage of Groq as compared to OpenAI? OpenAI is a paid model. So same thing, Groq in the long run, it's going to be a paid model, but its prices are much less expensive because Groq, it uses open source models. Okay, so this is why the price is very low. Now, if we look at the pricing model of Groq, pricing, it's on-demand pricing. Okay, so it's very cheap. Okay, this is the cost for 1.33 million tokens in input, and this is the price for the output. If you compare with OpenAI, it's much less. Look, and this is like the DeepSeek R1, okay, at 70 billion parameters, which is an expensive one. But let's look at normal models, like for example, Llama. Okay, look at 1.69 million tokens, it only costs 0.60. Okay, and you can see different type of prices, and also it provides you the speed, how many tokens are processed per second, and it's super fast. Look, you have 275 tokens per second, which is huge. Okay, and sometimes it can go for small models to 3,100. So it's almost at the same time. It's almost real time. Now, if I use this one, for example, Llama 3.5 right now, the model card, if I ask question, okay, look at the speed. What are the symptoms? Symptoms of the flu. You see, it's quite fast. 800 millisecond latency. Okay, number of tokens 3,575. So it's almost real time. It doesn't think, you know. So this is one of the advantages of Groq. And now you can do the same thing as we did before. View code. This is the same code that we have taken before. Now I'm going to use it over here, and we import Groq. Of course, we need to make pip install Groq as well. I did this before. Pip install Groq to make sure that all the libraries are installed. And then we open the client. We need to provide an OpenAI key. So same thing, you need to provide the API key here. I think that I have made it. Okay, so in my case, I did it in os.environment. And instead of making OpenAI API key, we replace it by the environment variable Groq OpenAI key. Another way to do it is when you create here a Groq client, you can do API key equal to Groq API key. But as I already mentioned to you, setting it as an environment variable is much better. Now, doing that, I can invoke different models with Groq. So I will try Gemma 29B IT, the same system prompt that I have defined before. And here, what are the symptoms of the flu? Okay, the role as assistant, I don't want to have response. Okay, let's try it. And print completion. I can bring it from here. Dot content. Okay, dot content. Now, look, this is a response that I get from this model. Okay, I can change, for example, my system prompt plus return response in HTML. Okay, So you can see it's a small model, very fast, and still can do some work. Of course, this model could be more prone to hallucinations. Now it returns a response, but we don't know whether it's going to return a good response every time. This is why you can choose different type of models, like for example, Llama 3.1. So the advantage of Groq, you are not only constrained to one model, okay, from OpenAI, for example, but you can use, for example, from different providers like Llama here, Llama from Meta, or even DeepSeek R1. Okay, they have a version of DeepSeek, which I can use right now to test it. Okay, this is DeepSeek. Okay, I made a mistake. Okay, look, this is the reasoning part, and this is the response part. It's great. Okay, all right, the user is asking about the symptom of the flu. They mentioned, so all of this is a discussion. Okay, it's a reasoning part, and this is the right response. This is how we can get it. This is Groq, okay, and this is the Groq response. Is pretty much the same as OpenAI. There are a few differences. Like for example here, it has prompt time, queue time, total time, and we can observe this over here. Okay, it has a prompt time. This is a little bit big. Let me make a small response to see the details just in a while. I'm gonna make it 128 characters, not to be very long. Okay, completion, prompt token, total token, and here it provides you also the execution time of the model. Look, extremely fast. It's really impressive. Okay, the completion time and queue time. So these values OpenAI doesn't provide it, and this is very useful when you want to look at the performance of your model. So here you can find more details about the chat completion for Groq, which share a lot of common with OpenAI. So here we have completion choices 0. This is the same way as we extract from OpenAI. But in addition, we have also other parameters like the prompt time, queue time, and total time. So in Groq also, if you want to run your model in streaming mode, it's the same thing. You can enable stream equal to true, like I will do here, and then you can collect them chunk by chunk. For chunk in completion, print chunk choices 0 delta dot content. You know, it's basically the same as in OpenAI. So in this case, you will find all the response coming as chunks. Okay, and this is a reasoning model, and it will start by doing the reasoning and then will perform the execution. If we make it a little bit smaller, 256. Okay. Now the last part of this training is to explore the DeepSeek API. Of course, if you want to use DeepSeek with Groq, it's possible, but you have only limited number of models. You have two models, DeepSeek R1 Distill Qwen 32B and DeepSeek R1 Distill Llama 30B. However, DeepSeek, it has also two models that are sophisticated, not in the distill mode, which is the DeepSeek Chat and the DeepSeek Reasoner. Now let's slide DeepSeek console or platform. Okay, let's look at the documentation first. So this is how to invoke DeepSeek. It doesn't have a playground to the best of my knowledge, but this is the code that we can use. Look, to use DeepSeek, you just need to use exactly the same OpenAI Python library. So DeepSeek, it builds on top of OpenAI Python library because OpenAI, it allows you to provide a base URL of the model that you want to invoke. So if we don't provide the base URL like we did before, it's going to invoke the default OpenAI URL, okay? However, if you have a model that is deployed and you want to adapt it to OpenAI Python library, you can specify here what is the base URL that contains the large language model inference engine. And in this case, we specify it's api.deepseek.com. Of course, this is implemented by DeepSeek to allow invoking their server. It's basically a REST request. So you can do that even without any library. It's a REST request. You can use pip install request and send it to this endpoint. And we need to specify also a DeepSeek API key. In the same way, we go to the console. And here I made an API key called Hackathon, which I provided you in the notebook. You can create one if you want. Just you need to add a balance and then create an API key. So DeepSeek doesn't provide any balance by default. You need to provide it in advance, and then you can consume using the API key. So this is an example of DeepSeek. Like in this case, we will use from OpenAI import OpenAI. Now I will create a DeepSeek. Let me call this DeepSeek client, just not to confuse with the previous one, which is basically an OpenAI client, but here we will specify the base URL as equal to api.deepseek.com. And we will do the same thing, there is pretty much no difference. This is exactly the same call that we do to OpenAI using chat.completion.create. The only thing that differs, instead of putting GPT-4o mini, we put DeepSeek Chat. Look now, we have DeepSeek Chat as the model that we can use from DeepSeek. Okay, and we have also DeepSeek Reasoner. We will see this in a while. Okay, this is DeepSeek Reasoner. This is if you want to use DeepSeek with reasoning. Okay, like we have here in DeepSeek. If you don't activate DeepThink, it will just use DeepSeek Chat. If you activate DeepThink R1, it will use the DeepThink or the DeepSeek Reasoner. Now we will use the DeepSeek Chat, which is equivalent to GPT-4o. And we will use the same system prompt and the same user prompt. And finally, we will receive a response. This is the same temperature, the top P, the max tokens. And if you observe, the execution time is a bit long. Actually, the DeepSeek API is still not stable. Sometimes it doesn't return a response. Sometimes it takes very long. We have discussed this in the beginning of the lecture. And this is maybe because they have more demand than the capacity of their servers. But I think this is going to be resolved in the near future. And you can see now we have a response. Okay, it responded very well. Even look much better than the 4o mini. This is equivalent to GPT-4o at very low price, almost 1 divided by 100 as the price of OpenAI. So I really recommend looking at DeepSeek Chat, although it's not always like will provide you a real-time response. It may be prone to errors due to the service unavailability, but it's worth trying it due to its cost and the quality. This is the best model in terms of balancing between cost and quality.
الله أكبر الدنيا سهل هنا.
Okay. So now the last part is we will use the same thing but using DeepSeek Reasoner model. So basically it's the same declaration. Instead of making DeepSeek Chat, we will use DeepSeek Reasoner. And the difference here, look now, if we look at the content of the response, it's going to take longer because it has a part for reasoning and a part for so look, it has two parts, the reasoning content and the content itself. To take the reasoning content, it's the part that DeepSeek Reasoner used to think about the problem and make logical reasoning. It's a response, that choices, 0, that message, reasoning, content. Let's look at the message itself, how it looks like. So look, you have a content part and you have also a reasoning content part. Should be somewhere. Let's visualize this. I need to look for OK. Yes, look, this part is the reasoning part, and this part here is the content itself part. So you can access them directly by making reasoning content is equal to this here, dot reasoning content, and the content is just dot content to separate between both of them. It's pretty much simple and straightforward. Okay, so with DeepSeek you can use the reasoning model or the chat model at a low price and high quality. Okay, because here, before giving any decision, is going first to reason about the thing, about the case, and then provide you a response. And this is the same thing, but using the streaming context. Okay, and showing them token by token from DeepSeek 3. So with this, we come to the end of our training on building an LLM chatbot using OpenAI, Groq and DeepSeek for the context of medical assistance. If you have any question, I will be happy to respond.
I suppose that they have a lot of questions.
Yes.
Questions? Any questions? Is it clear?
It's clear as an idea, but I don't think about the presentation.
So for the implementation, you have already a working code. You can spend time trying it, making some changes, making observation, changing the system prompt, changing the user prompt. Of course, for any API, there is always a learning curve, and it's only with practical activities and hands-on that you can capture all of the content.
So, Doctor, to create the key, do I need to pay any fees or something?
Yes, for Groq, I think you don't need. For DeepSeek and for OpenAI, you need to pay in advance. Even like $5 would do the job for several months.